The Dubuque Area Arts Collective presents Ruix Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ruix Podcast, Episode 2. I am your host, Jon Eagle. Yeah, I'm not sure I like how that sounds. I had actually written down in my notes and had planned to start saying, I am your host, because it makes me feel like I'm on a game show, and I've always wanted to be on a game show. But I'm just not sure it works for this. Anyway, that is not why you're here. You're here because you want to know about the art and music scene in Dubuque, Iowa, what's been going on, and Ruix Podcast is here to report that to you. Either that or you just accidentally stumbled on it while looking for podcasts on iTunes, or maybe you were guilted into listening to it by a bombardment of Facebook shares. But either way, the important thing is you're here, and I appreciate you being here. This is, like I said, Episode 2. Episode 1 went fairly well. I like it. I think it came out pretty well. I had a really nice talk with Victor, my guest that day, and got some pretty good feedback on the first episode. Most of the feedback that I got revolved around the fact that I say and a little too much. Verbalized pauses, if you will. Vocalized pauses. Whatever. And I do. That's probably true. I do say that quite a bit. Especially that episode, I was a little bit nervous. And even though I had my notes in front of me, I was still kind of stumbling on them. And then in the outro, Jesus Christ, I looked for what seemed like 5 full minutes for answers on, like, just looking on my phone at the internet for something that I should have had prepared. But anyway, this is all trial and error, people. And what I'd like to know is, when did all my friends suddenly become fucking experts on podcasting? How about that? I'm sort of kidding. I do appreciate the criticism, actually. And it's nice that people are listening. Anyway, so also the first couple of DAAC music series events went off pretty well. They got us off to a really great start. Very well attended. Your donations went to back into the nonprofit, as you know, and I even conducted a couple of interviews with the musicians that played at last week's show, the Earth exhibit that was held upstairs at 902 Main. I interviewed Pete Balistreri and Douglas Kramer-Nye from Iowa City, and Luke Bassiner, otherwise known as Azumaya from Madison, Wisconsin. And hopefully that interview footage will be used in an upcoming cable access show that we are planning to start filming in the fall. So look for that. And just around the corner, the music series 4 and 5 are creeping up. 4 will feature Id Pyramid from the Quad Cities. I believe the Quad Cities. Yeah, I think so. Boar from Dubuque and Nevada Green from Columbia, Missouri. And that is on August 13th. And then 5 is on September 2nd, and that will feature Aseeth from Iowa City, Dubuque's golden metal band Dredge, and of course Dubuque's own answer to the Traveling Wilburys, Venereal Crush. So those should be good shows. Don't miss those if you can help it. If you did show up to the first couple of, or any of the first music series, thank you very much for being here and for your support. It means a lot. If you weren't, first of all, why the fuck weren't you? But second of all, there's plenty more coming, and we'll be happy to have you at future events. So that being said, the Salon Art Show is also coming up on September 5th. The opening reception is on the September 5th anyway. And the show will actually stay up through September into early October to coincide with the Dubuque's Fall into Art tour. And the opening reception will feature guest musician Dave Zolo from Iowa City as well. So that'll be exciting. Today, my guest is Al Johnson. You probably know Al from, if you know Al, then you know him from U.S. Maple or Shorty, two Chicago indie bands that he was in the 90s that he formed. You probably don't know him from Shorty, but then don't know him from U.S. Maple. I don't think there's probably too many people out there that exist that only know him from Shorty. But unless, I guess, they saw a Shorty show and then died before U.S. Maple formed, I guess that. But then they wouldn't actually exist. So, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, you also might know him from a little cameo he made in the blockbuster film. I'm not sure it was a big blockbuster. I liked it. High Fidelity, starring John Cusack and Jack Black, and a really hot Lisa Bonet. But when she not hot, I guess. Yeah. He starred as a customer looking for a Captain Beefheart record. So let's go to that talk that I had with Al now and see what he's up to. This is episode 2 of Ruix Podcast. I am Jon Eagle, and with me is musician, actor, blogger, poet, Al Johnson, good friend.
Yes, very good friend.
Al Johnson, how are you, buddy?
I'm very good.
Well, thanks again for being here.
No, it's my honor, truly. It really is.
Well, we appreciate it. So, U.S. Maple, Shorty, before that, I guess, Snail Boy, right?
Correct.
That goes back to what, late 80s?
Yeah, I would say, I was thinking about this the other day, and, thinking, circa, when Snail Boy, the first single that we put out, which was Mungo, it was that turquoise vinyl 45. This is when, 40, getting a single out was a big deal. It was,
right.
It was sort of
collecting them was a big deal for me too.
Yeah, I know you're a big collector, and our opportunity manifested itself because John Moore, the singer from Tar,
mm-hmm.
He was in a band called basically Tar. Blatant Descent became Tar.
Oh, okay.
Blatant Descent was more of a hardcore band out of DeKalb, Illinois, consisting of John Moore, lead singer and guitar player, and Tim Mesher was the bass player. Mike Greenlees, the drummer, and Mark Zablocki. And then those guys ended up sort of venturing into sort of changing their parameters creatively a little bit.
Okay.
And then they put together Jackson, and then that was their sort of Back in Black that led them to the path to Amref at the time, which was the label
for sure
to get on
mm-hmm.
And I at the time I was living in Chicago. And actually, I was living in DeKalb, Illinois, where Tim Mesher is from, the bass player from Blatant Descent. And Tim was also in Snail Boy. He was our first bass player, and just a fantastic guy. Very original sounding, and I believe he played. Kramer made those aluminum basses. I believe he was playing with Kramer at the time, and this is what he used during the Blatant Descent into the Tar years.
Okay.
Tim was a roommate of mine, and he was playing in Tar, but he was also playing in Snail Boy at the time. And so this period in time, I was very fortunate, whereby Tim was practicing with Tar in the basement of Steve's house, Steve Albini, when he lived on Francisco Avenue there in Chicago. This is when Steve had an 8-track.
Okay.
And I remember when Steve had an 8-track in a room literally no bigger than the space that we're in right now.
Okay.
And, even before Snail Boy started to become a band, not of consequence, but just, I was dead set on starting a band. But, I was very fortunate because whenever Tar practiced, the rest of the guys lived in Chicago and Tar. Tim lived in DeKalb.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would go down and everybody was practicing in Steve's basement. So there would be like Urge Overkill would be down there early years,
Yeah.
David Viacelli, also known as Botch Billions from the Billions Corporation, the super independent agent now.
Mm-hmm.
He was Steve's roommate. The Digits were practicing also downstairs. Slint, whenever Britt Walford was in town.
This was all in DeKalb?
No, this was all in Chicago.
Oh, Chicago, okay.
Chicago. Like Steve's house became sort of like a nucleus of activity.
Yeah.
And because Steve was becoming who he is today at the time,
sure.
He was recording bands, and I guess what I'm trying to say is that it allowed me a very distinct, unique opportunity to watch bands that I saw at the time as being very, very successful.
Yeah.
Practice. And just, I probably at the time was 22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And, they would be practicing in the basement and I would be sitting upstairs in Steve's living room, just reading and looking through all of the things that he would be sent, mail stuff, because that was at the very end of Big Black.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was probably the best education I've ever had to this day.
Yeah, I bet.
And it was just, a lot of that had to do with just Tim Mesher being in the band,
mm-hmm.
And it allowed me a view of how you, as an adolescent, run a band professionally, at least from a perception standpoint.
Yeah.
I watched Steve, and I watched Blatant Descent become Tar, and I watched them climb the ladder, and I watched how the Digits, how they ran their band, how Rick Sims ran that band, and I was able to watch, Urge Overkill and Rifle Sport from Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah.
It was just sort of a very lucky kaleidoscope to have at the time.
Yeah, I bet.
From that, I took sort of a template as to how to change what I was doing,
mm-hmm.
and apply that template to whatever project I was in, and also be, as Brian Ferry would say, be in the in crowd.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't so much popularity, but it was like getting that firsthand experience.
Yeah,
of seeing, because I, like I said, I was young, and Snail Boy probably had been together at that point close to 2 years, but to have these people that at the time were making a name for themselves because they deserved it, and to see that happen in real time is just invaluable to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
That alone, that sort of catalyst of me changing the way I thought
uh-huh.
about how things work and meet the people that these people knew.
Yeah.
That was my launch pad.
Okay.
It's invaluable,
Yeah.
It's hard for me to put a value on that today because of the internet. And this is prior to 94, 95 when the internet came into, reality for all of us.
Yeah.
And
it was a different.
It was getting in the band.
Yeah.
And it was practicing and it was getting things down. And even at the time when I look back right now and I say to myself, God, how, how, how derivative.
Oh yeah.
We were,
mm-hmm.
It's just like, I cringe when I put on records that I played on a lot.
Oh really?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, man.
I do. I really do.
No, I could see that. I have the same problem with some of my early stuff too.
But I was very lucky being put in that position, and it was just a matter of factly,
mm-hmm.
you know.
Okay, so Was Snail Boy like largely the same band as Shorty, like with a lot of the same members, or was it completely different?
With Snail Boy, it actually started out originally with Todd Lamparelli on drums and Mark Shippey. Mark Shippey was the first person that I had sort of discovered as somebody who was more than competent. I used to work at a music store in town.
Yeah, love that guy.
Called Mel Elliott's, and it was in DeKalb, Illinois. And it was it was run by a man who was he was hooked up, and he was in debt quite a bit. And he was an old man. He had a hernia about as big as a cantaloupe that he would walk around with, and he had this bulge coming out of his stomach constantly, always worrying. And he had some weird agreement with a lot of the marketers where he was taking in, pens that said Mel Elliott music on them, or combs, or all of those little sort of marketing products.
Swag.
Exactly. And I felt like that this man was being intimidated by all of these people, and it was sort of beyond anybody's control to sort of talk to him about it. But I worked at this music store, and it would be like, not Ike's, but the other...
Rondinelli.
Yeah, Rondinelli. It was more of a Rondinelli type of store.
Sure, I get that.
And, at the time, I was just somebody very, very passionate about music. And Mark Shippey used to come in and, he would never buy anything, but he would just pick up any guitar that he thought was decent. I specifically remember the first time I saw Mark come in, and he came in and he picked up a Washburn solid body guitar, and he was playing and playing and playing, and I just thought, wow, this guy's just really amazing. I mean, it was beyond competence. It was just somebody without ego. Yeah. And it was somebody that I felt was very special, and it was a stranger. Totally. I like that. To this day, I think strangers, if you can like encapsulate them or invite them into a project, I find that to be invaluable. Sometimes, it could be luck, it could be anything, right? But that's how I met Mark. Was he used to come into the store, never buy a goddamn thing, sit down and play guitar, and I remember walking up to him and saying, "Look, my name's Al, and, would you consider starting a band?" And, Mark, being who Mark is, without ego, was like, sure. And really that was that. That's awesome. So, the more I think about, my career, in quotes, I guess I have to say that, luck has a lot to do with it. Right. Whether it's luck, randomness, chaos theory, however you want to think about it. But, you fall into somebody that you find very special. And when you realize that, it's important to act on that. Yeah. And that's how I met Mark. Yeah. And from that, we put an ad in the paper to just get a rhythm section, a drummer and a bass player. Okay. And the drummer was Todd Lamparelli, who remained in Shorty for the entire career. And Tony Ciarocci was on bass. Tony Ciarocci also more commonly goes by the name Ruix for the people that know him. He is the guy that went to Columbia College for film school, and he did all of our videos pretty much. Oh, okay, cool. I just watched the Shorty video this morning. He did, he did all of that stuff, and that helped us quite a bit. Just with exposure. Sure, absolutely. Where do you send like a promo video like that? Like zines and stuff like that back then? At the time, I remember assembling all of these people. Mm-hmm. The original Shorty video had a lot of little kids in there at the time. Oh, yeah. And guessing at their age now, I would say anywhere between 7 and 11 years old. Okay. And, the setting for that Shorty video, Koopy and Me, is at the time, was, sort of the initial narrative was a birthday party scene, and so we had all these children. So, albeit we had all of their parents there.
Yeah.
They had to be there, and I remember very distinctly one of the little girls choking on a hot dog.
Oh no.
And she has tears in her eyes. And if you look at the Shorty video, there's a quick shot of this little blonde child, because she had just finished choking, but we had to keep
keep filming.
We had to keep filming. We were on a limited budget.
Okay.
We had,
Yeah.
And Tony was in charge of all of this. But that girl is now probably close to 30 years old.
Yeah.
And she had contacted me when she was 22, 23 years old. And that's very surreal for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That would freak me out. Awesome.
It sort of settles you into how old you are, how long ago that was.
Right.
And, where you're at now, or where you're not at right now.
What did she say? What did she have to say?
She was I think she was surprised that the band had reached kind of at least a minimal level of fame.
Yeah.
It by no means was that band famous, but it did bring us quite a bit of attention, and this was pre-internet. So, you just did whatever you could to get it out there.
Yeah.
I remember hearing from John Spencer and David Yao and people who really liked the video for Koopy and me.
Mm-hmm.
And they would just show their friends. John Spencer's half-brother, Chris Spencer from Unsane.
Unsane, yeah.
He showed Chris, and then before I knew it, we were playing shows with Unsane, and that's how things worked back then.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I can't even comment on how things work today, but that's how they work then.
Yeah.
It was just activity equals moving forward a half step.
Yeah. Yeah, anybody can stream now. It's like there's no challenge to it anymore.
I know. It's I look at the way things are done today, and it's just it's so immediate. We're in the obviously we're deep into the information age.
Yeah. And
at the time it was playing live and getting into your Econoline.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
That's what you had.
Mm-hmm.
So that and we were very much a live band.
Yeah.
If we didn't play, people just thought that we were just ridiculous and numbskulls. And
well, I never got to see the band. I love. Well, I guess it was just a record and an EP, right?
Yeah. Well, with Snail Boy, it was actually John Moore's label was called No Blow.
Yeah.
I know they put out that first Blatant Descent record. It was a 45.
Okay.
And I remember asking him if he would put our record out.
Okay.
Meaning basically he would put out 500 singles,
mm-hmm.
and each member of the band got 10 or 20 copies of that. And then that's how you were paid.
Right.
That was our first step into getting onto vinyl.
Yeah. Awesome. You did 2 singles with Snail Boy or just one?
No, I guess there was, no, with Snail Boy, we did 2 singles. You're right.
Okay, that's what I thought.
The second single, on Sympathy for the record industry,
right,
with Long Gone John.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that Sympathy at the time was sort of specializing in all of these one-offs, like the White Stripes and
right.
Comeback or 68 Comeback and
mm-hmm.
and all of these bands. We used to open for the Babes in Toyland quite a bit in Minneapolis, and Laurie Barbero, the drummer, had whispered something into Long Gone John's ear, and he listened to our record and agreed to put it out, which to me was just a chasm leap.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Sympathy was that in my mind at the time at least put us on the map.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was very sincere about getting on the map. That's what I was about at the time.
Right. And then Shorty, Thumb Days and.
Exactly. With Shorty, Snail Boy had been a band for so long.
Yeah.
And, I guess I just wanted to sort of rebrand the band.
Yeah.
It was the same players, Tim Mesher from Blatant Descent and Tar, Mark Shippey on guitar, Todd Lamparelli on drums, and I was playing guitar and singing at the time. And, you know, I was learning as I was playing, you know, and I wanted to start fresh with the knowledge that I had gained just by sitting around Steve's house, you know, having that knowledge, not necessarily specific, but certainly unique.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, and observing the way they ran their bands
exactly,
or whatever.
Exactly.
Totally.
You know, so, and there was always a commonality, the way people worked, the way people put things out, the way they delivered information at the time, whether it was Urge Overkill or Rape Man.
Yeah.
And I could do nothing else but mimic that, because that meant success to me.
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
some level, you know, and success to me at the time was getting something out and hopefully riding the coattails of a headliner and being able to play.
Yeah.
You know, opening for Tar, opening for, the Digits, you know, touring with the Digits and whatever it took.
Yeah.
I got a job at Touch and Go Records in the shipping department.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize you worked there.
Yeah, I worked there for a couple of years, and the shipping department was sort of a gaggle of a group. It was me, John Forbes from Shasta, and originally Dirt out of Atlanta. He started in. I remember Dwayne Dennison. Whenever the Jesus Lizard weren't on tour, he would come back and make a little bit of money. And Dwayne, Dwayne used to wear Mark Fisher, also from Skin Graft. He was in the shipping department.
Okay.
Dwayne used to wear cotton gloves on his hands because he was very concerned about the condition of his fingers.
No way.
Yes.
Well, I guess it paid off because
it certainly did. God bless him.
Jeez.
I mean, the guy is, he certainly developed that sort of linear style that is, you know, so many bands has sort of derived.
Absolutely.
Done,
yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so from there, the shipping room. That's
Touch and Go.
When did the formation of U.S. Maple kind of figure into this?
You know, the same thing sort of happened where, like, the more involved I was, the more sharper my eye and the more educated I became.
Yeah.
And I realized at the time, honestly, it's like at the time, Touch and Go was the record label that I wanted to be on.
Yeah.
And I remember getting a phone call prior to getting a job at Touch and Go, and it was Corey Rusk from Touch and Go. And I thought that he was calling me to maybe sign the band.
Okay.
Quote unquote.
Yeah.
And he had called me at home, and he's like, is this Al Johnson? I was like, yeah, Corey. And he said, I saw you guys play the other night. You were really good. And, in my mind, and, I've got butterflies in my stomach, hoping to hear, would you be interested in being on the Touch and Go label?
Oh, absolutely.
And there was about 30 seconds of silence because I wasn't quite sure why he was calling me. And then the next thing I heard was, can you use a saw and a hammer and nails? So I ended up working for Touch and Go, basically building their shipping tables.
Okay.
And then I shortly thereafter joined the shipping department.
Okay.
And he was just, he knew I was part of the group as a whole in Chicago, part of the music scene. Yeah. But, by no means were we ready for Touch and Go, or was Touch and Go ready for us. But nonetheless, it was an opportunity.
Absolutely, yeah.
And at that time, like I said, the sort of the pre-internet days, it's like those opportunities, you just, when you got one, you wanted to move up, in a linear fashion, you wanted to make sure that the next move that you made did something for your project.
Sure, absolutely.
And that's what I was doing, was just taking the cues, learning as much as I could, and reaping the rewards, which were small but critical.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so and then Skin Graft was the first real label that Maple was on? Or?
Mm-hmm.
I guess you had that Wanderers single.
Well, the Wanderer single came around a little bit later by Mike Harburger, and he's a gentleman out of Boston, and he did an EP for us. He became a good friend of the band's. But, Skin Graft, because they had a P&D deal with Touch and Go, a production and development deal, just like Merge and
Sure.
and
Drag City.
Yeah, exactly. That, at the time, if you could not get on Touch and Go, this was the next best thing.
Sure.
And, U.S. Maple, I suppose, U.S. Maple really didn't fit anywhere, but Mark Fisher from Skin Graft offered us an opportunity, and he had the P&D deal with Touch and Go, and that was an opportunity that we needed to take.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's how we got I guess that would be our first good foot forward as a band, where we had an opportunity to go in and record and not have to pay for it out of our pockets.
Yeah.
And then just hope that whatever the output was would sell. Skin Graft was, what I really loved about the label at the time, and I still do, is just their attention to aesthetic detail.
Okay.
Mark had a lot of Mark was an art institute. He went to the Art Institute of Chicago. He was a
Chippy?
Mark Fisher.
Oh, Mark Fisher.
Yeah,
Oh.
from Skin Graft.
Oh, gotcha.
He, he was putting out these singles with comic books that came along.
Oh, yeah, I've got a couple of those.
And the thing about that is, they all look beautiful.
Yeah, they do.
None of them could ever make any money. But I was at the time, I was very, very interested in just putting out something, from a quality standpoint, the best that we possibly could do with the opportunity that we had.
Yeah.
And Skin Graft was that label that we first signed on with.
Okay. And you had a good experience there?
Yeah. Yeah, we had a great experience with Skin Graft,
4 records, right? 4,
yeah,
I think
yeah,
4.
we had, I believe so. When you get in the van and when you're playing, 150 dates a year or whatever, and the same 4 guys are driving around in the van and taking off of the jobs that they have and hoping that they come home with a little money. I mean, there was real real palpable struggle.
Yeah.
And, it was very hard for me to make the decision to leave Skin Graft and to go to Drag City.
Yeah.
Because I loved Mark and Fisher, and I loved what his label was about. But we were probably one of 2 bands at the time. The other band being Melt Banana from Japan. I mean, we were always playing live.
Yeah.
Because that was the way that that was the only way you could sort of increase your value.
Yeah.
And I at some point after a couple of years of doing that, it's like I started to realize the value of a good business.
Yeah.
And Drag City ran a better business at the time.
Okay.
I mean, they had been around a lot longer. A lot of their bands at the time were singer-songwriter type bands.
Yeah.
It just seemed to me that Dan Koretsky from Drag City was looking for a rock band to maybe toy with. And when he asked me about it, it was a no-brainer. After getting out and touring and in Europe and touring in the States and that, it's just like you want something to happen. Not necessarily fiscally.
Yeah.
But you at least want to keep moving forward, because if you're not moving forward, even moving laterally seems like a loss.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I could see that.
And that's why I made that decision. And it was very hard, because Mark Fisher was a very close friend of mine. He still is. Dan Koretsky is a very good friend of mine. But it was a business decision that I had to make.
Yeah.
For the band.
Yeah. Absolutely. So when did you, and backing up, I guess, a little bit.
Sure.
When did you, or how, I guess, did you and Mark Shippey end up meeting Pat and Todd?
It was very. There's nothing unique or special about it. I met Mark Shippey while I was working at a music store in DeKalb.
Yeah.
And we needed a rhythm section, and I remember putting an ad in the local college newspaper at Northern Illinois.
Oh, it was those two. That
Yes.
was fun. Okay.
And the two people that answered was Todd Lamparelli, the drummer who continued throughout Shorty's career, and Snail Boy, and Tony Ciarocci, who then became our filmmaker and our video player. I just put an ad in the paper.
Okay.
Prior to that, I remember living in DeKalb and answering an ad in the Reader, in the Chicago Reader, and I remember reading a classified ad, and I remember the classified ad saying, "Looking for a guitar player that is into Run DMC and AC/DC," and I was like, that sounds up my alley.
Yeah.
And I went down to Chicago to meet Jim Ellison from Material Issue.
Oh, okay.
And I was a rhythm guitar player in Material Issue for a couple of months.
No shit.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I was driving 66 miles from DeKalb to Illinois to practice, but I had such a passion and such drive to just be a part of the Chicago music scene at the time that I was looking for anything to be in. Now, this is prior to anything that I had put out, prior to Snail Boy. I was looking for anything. So I was driving from DeKalb, Illinois to Chicago to practice with Material Issue.
That's nuts. I did not know that. I guess there was another question I always wanted to ask you, is that because I know you've always fronted these bands, but I didn't know if you ever played any other instruments or.
Yeah, I grew up. I've been playing music since I was in the 4th grade. I was in the school band. My aunt.
What'd you play in the school band?
Flute.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The reason at the time, all of the kids in elementary school, of course, all of the boys were either playing cornet or snare drum. Those were the instruments that the boys played. That's
the macho instrument,
right? But my aunt was she was a state-renowned flautist, and my mother, knowing that she wouldn't have to pay for lessons, sort of made that choice for me.
Okay.
And I became a flute player in 4th grade, 4th through 8th grade. And I remember sitting in the 5th or 6th chair, and she was a very good teacher. She was very talented. And I remember just eliminating these women one by one. I went from 6th chair to 5th chair to 5th to 4th to 3rd. I was knocking them down like Stalin.
That's awesome.
And
you were in 4th grade at this time?
Yeah, I was in 4th grade. This was through elementary school.
Yeah.
When I'm not sure if they do this these days, if they even have band.
No idea. Yeah.
I'm not sure, but at the time they certainly did, and I was one of the only flute players in Illinois. I remember going to a solo contest, and the highest score that you could get as a soloist during solo contest was a perfect 7, and I had actually received a perfect 7.
Oh, wow.
So I, just through almost necessity and family, I learned to read music and practice and be a competent musician early on. It was the flute, because my aunt taught flute and I didn't have to pay for the lessons.
That's
nor
great.
did my mom.
Did you did you still play flute once in a while?
I have a flute.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. And I can play it. I know I've sort of littered on a couple of U.S. Maple songs. I'll do a trill here or there or anything like that. I used to bring the flute out on stage as if I was going to play it, and I would just sort of set it up against the amp, but I would never pick it up and play it.
I think now that you mentioned it,
I used to do it all the time. Just P.T. Barnum shit. I mean, I was very fascinated at not only with the music scene, with the new music scene, and sort of the AMREP build up and the touch and go bands. I was very almost sorely interested in becoming a personality and becoming a character and a narrative.
Sure. And
I used whatever I could to do that.
I like it. Yeah. Okay. Well, so when I guess my first time seeing you was when my high school band played with you guys out at the. I don't expect you to remember it, but out at the Great River Roadhouse.
Was that in Balltown?
Yes.
I do remember going there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I do. Is that structure still out there even?
I think it's there, but it's not that anymore. It's like a bar and grill or something. I don't know.
Right. I wasn't Melanie Miller and Ted Beakley booking that at the time, or there were a couple people just booking that venue.
Yeah, and I know Joel Jackson did a few.
Oh, Joel, right.
I think toward the end, maybe Melanie and Ted took it over or something.
I can't remember the circumstances, but we were taking any show that we could.
Yeah.
Concentrically out of Chicago. I just wanted to move around those rings outward and outward and outward as possible, hoping that at some point we would retain a booking agent. Mm-hmm. We would retain a record label, and just continue moving forward.
Yeah.
And you were a part of that. Did we headline that show, or was there another band?
No, it was us. Beneath was the name of the band.
Okay.
Me and I think Dave Hansen. He's still around. I still play with him occasionally. And Jim Meyer, who does not live here anymore. And I want to say the next band was Pachinko, maybe?
Oh my God, that could very well be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brian Baresh from Pachinko.
Yeah.
They were a big Madison band, and we had played a number of shows there. I looking back on it now, I think we had played with Pachinko and or in Madison more times than we had played in any other city.
Really?
The club at the time, that OK's Corral.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that place. Great. Great place.
They really, that was the place that, we were playing there more than I could ever get a show in Chicago.
Really?
I remember one summer calling Sue Miller, who was booking Lounge Acts at the time.
Yeah.
Her husband, Jeff Tweedy.
Jeff, yeah.
Yeah. I remember calling her 66 times over the course of 3 months to get a show. And our first show was with Jack Brewer.
I remember the name. I don't think
Jack Brewer was in, oh my God. Well, he was reading poetry when we opened for him. And then there may have been a little instrumental thing, but
okay.
I'm trying to remember the name of the original band that Jack Brewer was a part of, and it's evading me right now. But at the time, AMREP was sort of building itself up into the spotlight. Touch and Go had that sort of Chicago foundation, and they had the Butthole Surfers and the Digits, and they had
Urge.
Steve and Urge, and they had all of these things going on. Any way that you could move up or get a show, you took advantage of. And, I was just following the path, following the coattails of all of these people that I come to know and respect.
Yeah.
Saccharine Trust, is that Jack Brewer?
Yeah, that sounds right.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I remember now.
Okay. Back to the Roadhouse. I guess Dave and I remember we went up and you had some merch with you for sure, but you definitely also had some odd things like toilet paper and tuna that you were selling.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I think Dave bought a can of U.S. maple tuna from you. It was just a generic can of tuna. I asked him the other night if he still had it, but I guess he ate it when he was 15.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that now. You just put that weight on that can. I mean, I remember buying I became sort of involved with the whole idea of publicity.
Yeah.
And so I started to study people who were like the forefathers in public relations. The father of public relations is a gentleman. His name is Edward Bernays.
Mm-hmm.
Edward Bernays' uncle was Sigmund Freud.
Oh, okay.
And I was very much impressed with the way people were able to insert themselves into a limelight or to sort of create a niche to where they were able to be seen by people.
Yeah.
I mean, they generated interest before that interest was even negotiable.
Yeah.
And I remember buying an old briefcase from a Salvation Army, and Mark Shippey from U.S. Maple and Snail Boy and Shorty, who has been with me the entire time of our career.
Mm-hmm.
He was just a phenomenal artist, and I had him on this briefcase write the name of the band and the P.O. box and where we were from, and I would sort of come out on stage and actually set the briefcase down in front of the band.
Yeah.
Sort of like an old sort of any sort of old sort of circus novelty act, or a magician would come out and open the case.
Sure.
And you would see who he was.
Yeah.
I mean, I was literally doing those kinds of things to just get exposure, to just allowing people to know who we were.
Yeah.
That's how my passion with that industry and with those ideas of generating publicity matched with me being in a band. I combined those two. I tried to do as much as I could so that the band would feel that they were that we were of value.
Yeah.
Even though we were getting paid $50.
Right.
And even though we would play in front of, say, 75 or 100 people, but by the end of the show, there would be 6 to 12 guys in ball caps left. That was a success to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Baby steps.
Mm-hmm. Baby steps, exactly. And I've always found like your persona on stage to be not at all like you are to talk to. Like it's like a definite character, and that like brings me to like, because I know you act like.
Mm-hmm.
But do you have like some people might know you from High Fidelity? I guess it's probably the most high profile.
Sure.
But do you have like improv or like in your or any kind of acting background in your history? Or
yeah, I do. I started to study acting in Chicago, almost concurrently with when the band had moved from DeKalb to Chicago, and then we became Shorty.
Okay.
And I became involved in the Chicago independent theater scene. Specifically, there was a theater at the time called Center Theater of Chicago. And, I remember vividly, taking, classes on monologues, doing Studs Terkel plays, and that was something that was just a natural extension of my interests and what I felt at the time were my talents.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's how those two came together. Making that leap to High Fidelity, there was a lot of little things that had happened. The band had started to grow a little bit. Tony was making videos of the band.
Yeah.
And, I think the band that has had the biggest impression on me, palpably, was the Digits. And the Digits did a European tour, and I believe it was close to 7 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It was a huge tour, and there were 2 bands that were going to open for the Digits on that tour. One was already selected. They were a band called 68 Comeback.
Oh yeah, I like that band.
And I knew that there was a space that they were looking for somebody else. And at the time, I was working at Touch and Go, so I was receiving all of the inside sort of gossip and information. I just knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And
again, right place, right time.
exactly. And I sort of nudged the band in, put a bid in, sort of. We'll play basically next for nothing. Next to nothing. And Rick Sims from the Digits had listened to the band, and I'm sure he was like, well, whatever. I mean, but on that tour, I learned more about show business from Rick Sims than I have from anybody else.
Is that right? How so?
Well, about 3 weeks before we started this long European tour with the Digits had played at a venue in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And the Digits originally were from Champaign, Illinois, where University of Illinois resides. And the Digits had played a show, and Rick had went home with his girlfriend, I believe, at the time. And the drummer and the bass player, Doug,
mm-hmm.
they had also gone home. The two guys had fallen asleep, I believe, in the back of the van while their wives drove them home because they had played a show. Well, the girls fell asleep and the van crashed and killed the women.
Oh, my.
Their wives.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And I thought, it was such a tragedy and it was so sad. I just, I knew that, the tour wasn't going to happen, and I felt so bad about it because I was at that show.
Yeah.
Well, lo and behold, they decided to still do the tour. And it was really emotional because, at the time, Doug, the bass player, the bass player, the whole rhythm section, they were in slings, and cast and stuff.
Oh, that's crazy.
They had took a couple tumbles in the van when it went off the road.
Mm-hmm.
They just missed dying.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very sad because when you're on a long tour, and you're touring with another band in tandem, there are times when you stop at rest stops or you're at a hotel and you want to call your family and say hello.
Yeah.
And there were times when, two of the guys in the Digits were in tears. They had nobody to call because they had died.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's brutal.
It was very brutal. It was a wake-up call for me about, I suppose, life in general and just the situation that we were in.
Yeah.
And here I am, in the middle of Europe somewhere. I'd never flown anywhere.
Yeah. Prior
to that, touring with this band where this tragedy had taken place,
mm-hmm.
and yet they probably wanted to sort of get away from the wake and the funeral and maybe continue on. But I learned from Rick Sims specifically how to flip that light switch on, and once you hit the stage, to be professional and to do what it is that you had come up with and to execute it.
Yeah.
Rick, I remember traveling with Rick, and he was very paranoid about getting sick every time he had come to Europe. He would catch a cold or the flu.
Yeah.
And I remember he had 2 or 3 books about herbal medicines on him
mm-hmm.
at the time, and he had Golden Seal with him, the herbal medicine.
Yeah. And
he was always putting drops in his mouth, so he wouldn't get sick.
Okay.
Again, he got sick again on the tour. But opening for them, for me it was just the definitive way to do things, because even though Rick had the flu and the drummer and the bass player had lost their loved ones, they hit the stage and they executed the show that was just, you just never know that all of these things had taken place.
Sure.
And from that, I took discipline.
Oh, okay.
From that
makes a lot of sense. Okay. What else? I want to talk about a little bit about how we met, but I guess we met when I was in high school, but we actually sort of became friends through our mutual friend, Tim.
Yeah, Tim. I miss him so much.
Oh, me too. Me too, every day. But I also wanted to bring him up because I know we've talked about playing together for a long time, mm-hmm. but the one time that it actually did happen for a while was because of Tim.
Exactly.
With the final flu. And,
right.
Things were almost happening, and then it's just a shame.
Yeah. Tim's sister, Melanie, and I, Melanie was pregnant with Van, my son at the time. And I made the decision to move to Dubuque because I didn't want to put my son through public school in Chicago, and I was quite a bit younger than I am right now. And I was trying to make the best decision that I could as a new father.
Yeah. And this would have been about 2002, 3, something like that?
Yeah, exactly, around 2000. Well, Van was, my son was born in 2005, so 2004-ish, somewhere around there. And, I had met Tim Miller, and he was just a guitar phenom,
Oh, boy, and was he ever.
We were, two peas in a pod, on many levels, unfortunately, Tim and I affectionately, adored drugs. And, this was something that we participated in as well as everything else. And, it's just, it's a real tragedy, that Tim has passed. And, it's very, very, it's something that I think about literally every day.
Yeah.
And I was asked by the family to do a well-being check on Tim. And, I found Tim when he had passed, and that shook me up, more than I can say almost anything in my life, at least in that direction. But, I learned from Tim about you, and then Tim would bring me to see you play, and I really, really loved the way that you played because you were so comfortable, and you were a live drummer, and you were very comfortable on stage, and that's always been more important to me than chops.
Yeah.
You have the chops, but I mean, it's just that seeing you play live and seeing that you had such passion for what you were doing, that has always moved me more than anything else.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
I mean, to this day, I would consider playing with you, above anybody else. Just because of I've seen you over the years. I know how talented you are, and I know how comfortable you are on stage.
Yeah.
And being comfortable on stage enough to where you can sort of let your personality come out and flourish is very, very important to me, because a lot of the best bands that have had influence on me, from say the Wipers to all the way down to the Cows, these are people that were very comfortable on stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's theatrical elements to the singer. I've always had this thing for like a band having a narrative. When you go see Nick Cave, you're seeing somebody who is telling almost a story. You have an author in the band, and then you have the band behind them supporting that and really reinforcing that whole idea. Yeah. And then it becomes a band not just running through their set. It becomes a band that becomes this. They become this storytelling unit that really, that's what has always captured me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So what are you, I don't know. Your blog, aljohnsonIsdecent.com.
Right.
Wonderful blog, by the way. I absolutely love reading it, but I notice it's pretty largely inactive lately.
Yeah, I mean, I was very interested in it initially, and I'm still interested. I'm still interested in doing that kind of writing. Yeah, I think I'm in a better space now to do that.
Okay.
At the time when I started to do that, you're never quite sure what to write about, because I didn't want to be somebody that I wasn't, which is somebody who is constantly reminiscing about the band.
Sure.
There's more elements to me as a person than just being in the band.
Definitely.
but I find, even now that there seems to be equal, if not more people, at least interested in what I might have to say.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could find somebody that could sort of support me on that level, where I could just do the writing,
Yeah.
and then have them to upload it,
Yeah.
and it being out there.
Oh yeah.
It's something that I could do, without a wink.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the site looks really nice too. I was going to ask you if you were at all, I guess, graphically inclined.
I'm not.
No.
I'm strictly a writer.
Okay.
And I've had to take all of those classes at Clark University, but I've never been somebody that was specifically inclined with Photoshop at the time, and then obviously we've come a long way since Photoshop, but I'm who Will Hamill is.
Mm-hmm.
Will Hamill is somebody who is very, very good at that.
Right.
And he was my vehicle in getting all of that stuff out there.
Okay. Yeah.
I think I started to sort of doubt a few entries into that blog what the purpose of it was.
Okay.
And there's like the bands and that part of my career when I was in bands that I could write about, but that's not something that I need to sort of lean on.
True.
I find myself, I have trust in myself to be a writer and an observer and a commentator on the human condition in general.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I would like to go that route. And that's always going to encompass my history in music, but it's going to be other things as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, you brought a good example of that right here. With the scrapbooks that you kept.
Yeah.
I wish I would have thought to do stuff like this.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in that scrapbook. Some of it was given to me, and a lot of it was just, that image there is just one of the first press slicks that you used to have to send out. You remember those days when you used to have to put a picture of the band in an envelope and put a stamp on it and send it to the club? That's actually a track sheet from Acre Thrills, Brian Paulson's notes.
Oh, okay. That was the first Drag City record, right?
Yes, Acre Thrills. I believe. Was Talker before? No, it was Talker, Acre Thrills, and Purple on Time. I believe.
Yeah. Talker was the first Drag City?
I believe so.
No, I'm not sure.
Me either. In any case, I just felt that I needed to keep as much as I could because I had a son, and I felt like one day we could sit down and I could just give these to him. Just as part of the story as to who I am.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. What about what are you doing now these days, creatively or not? Like, creatively, I know you just graduated last year from Clark, right?
Yeah, I did. I graduated in Clark, and in Dubuque, there's a core group, a dozen or so of people that I find to be talented and very competent, of which you are part of,
Thank you.
And there's you, there's Rick Eagle and Matt and Matt Holman and Drew Bissell and Bob Bucko and Tim Miller, and there were all these guys, but you were so tightly interwoven.
Yeah.
I guess I always felt like I've always felt like sort of an outsider, and I never wanted to be somebody to walk into a room full of strangers and people that were competent, if not more competent than I was, and to just sort of like, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it because this is how things have to be. It was awkward for me.
Really?
Because it was, it's always important as somebody, as a leader of a band to at least elicit, respect from everybody.
Sure.
And it's just that I didn't know everybody real well. I
Okay,
knew
yeah.
Tim Miller. I knew how great he was.
Mhm.
And Tim Miller opened the doors to Jon Eagle, and then he opened the doors to Rick, and then Bob Bucko moved back here from Oregon, and
Mhm.
it was just I was so much was happening to me, so much so many new things. I wasn't sure how to organize it. I just knew that I wanted to do something,
Yeah.
but at the time, I really wasn't quite sure as to how to go about it.
Okay.
And it's being in a new area with new people.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sure. Yeah.
That's about it.
But now you're going on, let's say, almost 12 years being here.
Yeah, I think
You think you might be
roughly
ready to
11
play
years.
again anytime?
It is something that I think about every day.
Yeah.
Really. I guess the thing that where I feel a little shaky on is that you guys are so tight, and there seems to be this you're always coming together in different forms and putting out different projects. I still feel like an outsider.
I could see that.
You
Sure.
know, and
But everybody you just mentioned is absolute, infinite respect for you and what you've done. You have a bit of a track record that you could back up anything that like if you wanted to, you would definitely have the support system, I think, in place if you wanted to return to music or whatever.
right. I mean, over the years and where things are at today with new music and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
I ask Bob what's going on. Bob Bucko.
Yeah.
I mean, Bob Bucko is sort of the quintessential musician and somebody who you can talk to about Rocket from the Tombs all the way up to what's going on today, because
Sure.
he remains active.
Yeah, he does. He does.
And I have great respect for that.
Yeah.
I have great respect for a man who gets into his vehicle and goes out for a month on his own.
Yeah, absolutely. Me
I
too.
mean, that is just something that I could never have done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's different situations. Bob's, he's a musician. He's able to do improv. He's able to do shows on his own. He's able to jump in where, my role is slimmer. It's defined.
Right.
It's like I need. I do the best. My role best is to sort of just to sort of lead the band in more of a creative, more of a narrative way.
Yeah, you need the cast of characters.
I miss that.
Yeah.
I miss that. I do.
Well, yeah, keep it in mind because I would love to see you return to doing something creatively. Not that you're not. Like I said.
No, I mean it's true. I mean I've dropped out. And
What are you doing for a job these days?
Well,
are
right
you
now,
still welding or?
I welded for close to 7 years, and I had a son, and I needed,
Great little guy too.
I
love seeing him.
Van. He's going to be 10 in August 27th. He's turning into a little person now, and
Yeah.
as a father, once you can, I remember pushing him around in a stroller, and time elapses, and then before you know it, he's with his friends, and then there's going to be a time when he doesn't always want to hang out with dad or mom.
Sure, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to soak in the experience of being a father.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, I wanted to be there for him.
Yeah,
And and because of that, my personal desires to want to perform, to want to do this and do that, all of that has to be on deck.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
But he's in a position now where he's going to be 10 years old, and he's got his own ideas are starting to manifest, and I feel more comfortable now where, like, if I felt that there was an opportunity for me, or if I felt that I fit in somewhere, I would certainly take advantage of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm very much an outsider.
Yeah.
Because there's this Dubuque Mafia, where like, you've got the capos and you've got, the soldiers and you've got the guys that can play. And, and I've learned a lot from these guys. I've learned a lot from Matt Holman and I've learned a lot from Drew, and I've learned a lot from you. And there is, certainly it's like there are rough diamonds in this town. And I feel like it could happen at any moment. I feel like it could have happened yesterday. Mm-hmm. This great idea. Yeah. And it just needs to be honed. Yeah. And that's kind of what I do best. Yeah. I'm not a super guitar player, but I understand theory, and I'm able to communicate to musicians my ideas. I can do it musically, or I can do it just through adjectives. Yeah. But I'm getting older, and I see how things are falling into place now, and how things are done much differently since the internet since we've entered the information age.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
For me to get back into that world, it would take something. It would take a project that really took me by storm. Yeah. And then I would just try to sharpen that. Yeah. I'm very interested in producing bands.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's I would really love to be a producer in the way that, say, Michael Gira was for us when he produced Talker. Uh-huh.
Love that record too.
We lived.
Sounds so
we
good.
Basically went out to. We were in Brooklyn, mm-hmm. Park Slope, Brooklyn, and we recorded at Martin Bisi's studio, BC Studios, and in that studio, the Herbie, he's done Herbie Hancock and some of the early Sonic Youth, mm-hmm. and it's when Michael worked for us as a producer. He was roommates with Martin Bisi, mm-hmm. and they lived in a big armory, a huge space in New York. And I like the idea of having somebody who is part of your recording project, who was there to make suggestions and to maybe sit down and say to the band, let's consider doing this, or let's take off 8 measures here. It's a little long, or let's do it again, or you didn't get that at the same time. Right. That's what a producer does.
Yeah, totally.
Years ago, there was I remember hearing through the grapevine, there was a conflict of interests between the way, say, Steve Albini operates and the way, say, Thurston Moore operates from Sonic Youth. Mm-hmm. At the time, as I understand it, I remember hearing that Thurston Moore, I remember reading a quote by Thurston Moore saying, if a producer has to sit down with a band and smoke a joint with them so that they feel comfortable, yeah, to elicit a very, very pristine performance, then he's done his job. I don't want to delineate what the job of a producer is, right? But I do think that there is a role for somebody who cares about a project so much that he is a part of it, but not necessarily part of the band.
Sure, absolutely.
Whereas Steve's school of thought is, the band needs to stand on their own, mm-hmm. and if they can't get it in 3 or 4 takes, then let's move on to the next song. Okay. You know what I mean? There's sort of 2 schools of thought in the way that things are recorded.
Yeah, definitely.
Steve has been a mentor of mine, mm-hmm. for years and years, and I've learned just invaluable stuff from him. I've been with Steve when I felt that he felt vulnerable, or when he was questioning himself, and I've been with Steve when Steve knew that he had really nailed a performance as an engineer. Uh-huh. I mean, I've just been very fortunate in that I've been at the right places at the right times. Yeah. Not that I have the answers for everything,
Right.
but just that I have seen a lot of things played out,
Yeah.
and then have listened to the consequences.
Yeah, for sure.
You know.
Okay. Well, I think that might be all I have. Do you have anything else you think, anything else you want to add? Anything to plug? Anything like that?
Well, I mean, we're in Dubuque. I would just say to any listeners, stick around, because I think there is that diamond in the rough here. I think there's something here that could go, that could succeed on a much bigger scale.
Yeah, I think so too. What was it that Roger called it? Roger Benz?
Yeah, another very, very talented person.
Yeah. Something on the river.
Yeah. Well, when you come into Dubuque, it's the stone sign was a masterpiece. What, masterpiece of the Mississippi?
Masterpiece on the Mississippi. Yep.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's where we're at. The masterpiece of the Mississippi.
Yeah.
And I think that is here. I think that idea, that element, that nucleus is here.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see what that is, whether I'm a part of it or not.
Yeah, I hope you are, but I couldn't agree more. And I think what we're doing here with Ruix and
I love this thing, that the DAC, this whole thing.
Yeah.
It's the most what's the word I'm looking for, I guess. I mean, with the art shows and with the music and with the crowds you guys have been pulling in, I mean, this is the proving ground.
Cool.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
it's a proving ground for those that have created it, and it's a proving ground for those that get to this town.
Yeah.
I think, also Susan Price over at Smokestack and her husband Scott, that's a great venue as well.
That's what I've heard. I haven't been over there yet.
It's a wonderful venue.
I have to check that out.
I just hope that the town is now big enough and tolerable enough to allow these things to exist, because it's so important. It's so important that the march continues.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing it,
John.
buddy.
I appreciate
All right,
it.
I
really
appreciate
do.
it too.
Thank you. It's my honor.
All right. Okay, so that's how that went. You were listening to Al and I drinking bloodies and discussing his career, music in general, music in Dubuque. That was fun. That was a really good conversation. I love that guy. And I'm really appreciative that he came down to do the interview. Again, his blog is www.aljohnsonisdecent.com. He's not super active on it right now, but I strongly urge you to go and read it, because it's really good stuff. And then, if you haven't already, check out his past catalog, U.S. Maple, Shorty. If you can find the first couple of Snail Boy 7-inches, I'm sure they're available online somewhere, maybe YouTube or something. Check it all out, because it's all great. I love Al. That was a really, really fun time. And again, coming up here, we got August 13th, Music Series 4 with Id Pyramid, Boar, and Nevada Green. And Music Series 5 on September 2nd with a Seath, Dredge, and Venereal Crush. And then the Salon grand opening reception featuring Dave Zolo on September 5th. So these are things to be looking for in the coming months. Read the blog, ruixzine.tumblr.com. That's the blog that I update every week. Except today I haven't updated it yet because I've been doing this. But I will get on that after this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next month.